perception of how big it would be. It was over in Spain. You know, that would seem like a myth, but literally the day after
All right, folks, 4:16. Um, I'm having a little noise in my background, so give me 5 minutes, please. There's not even half the class here. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, as usual, if less than 70% of the class shows up, I'm not posting any recording. But that said, we're going to see how far we can get into the reproduction. More than likely, might have to do a little 7 o'clock class on Monday to finish it up, but we'll see, okay? All right, so as I'm sure we all know, the ability to actually generate active gametes begins at puberty, right? So this is here, a burst of hormones activates maturation of the gonads and testes. This is in males, of course. Normally, it happens between the ages of 9 and 14. Now, if a male, well, both male or females go through early puberty, we call that a precocious puberty, right? So precocious. You're too quick to want to get to the stuff, right? Now, if on the other hand, the puberty is delayed, I mean, there are cases of puberty being delayed late into the teens, 17, 18, and these people are just hitting puberty. We call that eunuchoidism, as in a eunuch, which is kind of an insulting term if you think about it, right? So normal puberty, 9 to 14. It's too early, precocious puberty. If it's too late, eunuchoidism, right? Now, as you are aware, there are certain physical changes that occur during puberty. We're not just talking about the ability now to form gametes. We refer to these, of course, as the secondary sexual characteristics, okay? So these are the features that develop in the body that allow our reproductive system, A, to work efficiently in many cases, and B, also act as signalers to let those around us know that we are of reproductive age, right? And I'm sure you know all of these already. So for example, you have voice changes in both male and females, right? So the voices of males and females will start to deepen. Obviously, in males, the deepening occurs is a little bit more drastic. That is because of the testosterone causing the thickening of the vocal cords more dramatically in males than in females. We have differential hair growth, and by that I mean A, your hair starts growing faster, and B, the hair starts growing under your arm and in the groinal region, and the hair in the groin and under the arm is actually different from the hair on your head or on your skin, generally speaking. When you look at the pubic hair or underarm hair under the microscope, you can actually tell the difference between those hairs based on their structure, right? So the hair in these places is not just any old hair, it's specialized hair. Mental changes. What does that mean? Does it mean you go crazy? Some of you probably. But generally speaking, when we say mental changes, we're talking about interest, right? Generally speaking, your 8, 9-year-old boy has no interest in girls whatsoever. Couldn't care less about them. But somehow by the time he gets to 12 or so, all of a sudden some girls are very fascinating. Why? Mental changes, right? Now, here's an interesting thing to consider. Many people who are homosexual or transsexual or whatever it is, they claim that they've felt that way since they were in their very, very early ages, 5, 6. I even heard one person when they were 2-year-old, right? But generally speaking, human beings do not have any sort of attraction to other human beings until they hit puberty. So my question to you is that possible? And just think about it, right? because I've technically already answered the question for you, but we'll see if you pick it up. Now, changes in body conformation and the skin, what does that mean? For example, males, the build gets heavier, more muscular. Okay, Abby, mental illness. I'm not going to get involved in the mental illness part. That's social science. We here deal with real science, so that's nothing to do with me, right? Now, physical changes, increase in muscle in males, females as well, but of course, males build more muscle. In females, you also have deposition of fat around the hips and the waist, etc., etc. Well, more hips than waist. You have also changes to the skin. For example, in the skin starts to thicken in both males and females, but it thickens more in males than it does in females. And is this one of the reasons why males are particularly susceptible to things like pimples at this stage? Is because their skin gets thicker than the female skin. And because of that, it's easier for dirt to get deposited down into your hair shaft and block the shaft. Because the shaft, of course, is longer. Right? So when it comes to things like pimples and acne and these things, males tend to suffer from it more, as well as suffer from it more intensely. Because another thing that testosterone does do is it has a tendency to weaken one's immune system. All right. So when boys are going through puberty and getting hit with all this testosterone, then and their skins are thickening, they also have a reduction in their immune system's ability to fight off the infection as well, right? So, of course, as is related to the sebaceous gland secretion that we mentioned earlier, and we mentioned the thickening of the skin already. All right. Now, obviously, during this time as well, you're going to have changes to the genitalia. You know, obviously, in males, the penis tends to get larger at this point, right? Now, there is some evidence, of course, that testosterone levels do impact the size of the genitalia during puberty, okay? But there's a very strong genetic correlation as well to the size of the genitalia, right? So it's a combination of testosterone levels and your genes that determines how large the male genitalia will become, right? But for the most part, it does tend to increase in size. There are some unfortunate people that the increase in size is not significant, but you know, such is life, right? Now, generally speaking, the testes are going to be what we consider to be the primary male sex organ. I know normally when I see things like primary organ of sex, most people will think of like penis and vagina and these kinds of things. They are not primary. Your primary sex organ refers to the part of the anatomy that actually makes your gametes. So testes are making the sperm and the ovaries are making the eggs. Therefore, those are your primary sex organs, right? So testes in males now. As it says here, each testes is an oval structure about 5 centimeters long and 3 centimeters in diameter. Now, it is covered over by a sheath called the tunica albuginea. If you've ever had the experience of being around someone when they're butchering like a goat or something, one of the things that we tend to say from goats is, of course, the testicles. Why? Because it goes into the mannish water, right? I guess now you know why it's called mannish water, because they put in the mannish part of the goat in the water, right? So you'll see they actually have to peel the tunica albuginea off of the testicles. It kind of looks like a whitish seat. And then you can chop it up and toss it in the mannish water, right? Now, well, I mean, it's called mannish water for a reason, right? I guess they're telling you who's supposed to be drinking it. Now, the testicles, of course, are located in the scrotum, right? As I'm sure you know. The testicles themselves are made up of a series of lobules, so mini lobes. Each one has about 250 lobules, right? And each one of them is going to contain 1 to 4 seminiferous tubules, and that converge to form a straight tube, which leads to something called the ret testis. So basically, you have 250 lobules. Each of them, you have about 4 tubules, and the tubules merge together to leave, right? Which means, of course, you have a lot of real estate, a lot of surface area inside the testes, which is good because the male has to make somewhere between 150 and 300 million sperm a day. So then some males need this large surface area. Now you also have specialized cells called interstitial cells that are going to be found in between the tubules. And what makes these interstitial cells important, also called Leydig cells, is that they produce testosterone, right? So testosterone, as you know, is not coming from the pituitary or any place else. The testes are making the testosterone, and specifically the Leydig cells. Now, this is just a basic look at the male reproductive system, right? As Daniel rightly said, luteinizing hormone stimulates the action of the Leydig cells. You're quite right about that. So here we have the scrotum, and of course the testes within here. Here you can see the seminiferous tubules within the lobules here, right? Now, one thing I want to mention about testes. Generally, basically, before a baby is born, okay, let's say we're talking about let's say the first trimester, right? Trimester, of course, is 3 months, right? And honestly, the trimester is like is kind of arbitrary because this is decided, hey, let's check it every 3 months, right? But generally speaking, in the first, let's half of the first trimester, when a woman tries to determine the sex of her baby, it's very, very difficult, right? Because when you do an ultrasound and you look in the baby all babies appear female at that stage, right? Now, one of the reasons for that is that the testes in that fetus are not in the scrotum. The testes are in the abdomen, in basically the same position that you'd find ovaries in a female, okay? As the development of the fetus goes along, near when the fetus is to be born, then now the testes are supposed to move down from the abdomen, down into the scrotum. So when the baby now is born, it should have its testes in its scrotum, okay? That's what normally happens. But of course, there are conditions which cause the testes to stay within the body, within the abdomen. And we're going to talk about those in a little bit, right? Now, here's how this goes. So within your seminiferous tubules, you produce the spermatozoa, which are like the young sperm. You're then going to move the spermatozoa via the ret testes, right, up into a storage structure called the epididymis. The epididymis is now where you're going to have the sperm essentially maturing, right? So when the sperm is first produced in that spermatozoa, those sperm are not ready. They can't do anything. They have to move into the epididymis and be stored there and mature there. And then eventually they make their way down the epididymis and to the tail end of the epididymis, where they're going to be stored for action. You want to think of it that way, right? This in this tail end of the epididymis, where the no mature sperm can leave now and go into this tubule here called the ductus deferens or the vas deferens. And from there now, the sperm can make its way through the reproductive system. Notice I didn't call it semen, I call it sperm. Because that's basically what this is, sperm and some hormones, right? It's not semen yet. Tunica albuginea, of course, as you know, is the outer covering of the testes we mentioned earlier. And I remember we said that each lobule is made up of 1 to 4 seminiferous tubules, and they merge together to form a straight tubule that goes into the red testes. And from the red testes, you move them into epididymis, right? All right. So, what's special about the scrotum? First of all, mammals are weird animals. Mammals are weird. Here's why mammals are weird. Pretty much all other groups of animals have internal testes, all right? So when you look at lizards and frogs and all of these other animals, their testes are inside their bodies where it's nice and safe and nothing bad can happen to them, right? Except, of course, in mammals like ourselves. For whatever reason, evolution was a good idea to hang them on the outside of the body where they can go flapping around in the breeze. And I'm sure you all have heard before, hey, they have to be on the outside because outside is cooler, right? Because in order to produce sperm, your testes, or well, not yours, most of you are female, the testes have to be at a temperature it's around 3 to 5 degrees cooler than the body, right? All of that is correct. That is the main reason why we need a scrotum to hang the testes outside the body and away from the body so that it doesn't press against the body so that you don't overheat them, right? But once again, this is a bad evolutionary practice. Why do I say that? Because mammals that live primarily in water, like dolphins and whales, their testes are internal. So it's not that internal testes couldn't be done, it's that nature apparently couldn't be bothered, right? Anyway, now your scrotum is separated. I keep saying your. I don't even know if there are any males in the class at the moment. Yeah, nope. Anyway, so the scrotum is separated into two, of course, because there are two testes. Okay. Now, generally speaking, the scrotum is going to contain smooth muscle fibers, right? Which is going to allow the contraction of the testes, right? And the fibers are called the dartos muscles, and they're in the subcutaneous tissue. So these dartos muscles are below the skin of the scrotum. And when they're contracted, they make the testes look all wrinkly. And when they relax now, the scrotum stretches out and it looks all smooth. So why are we doing that? Well, what's the point of being able to contract the scrotum or relax the scrotum? Once again, it has to do with temperature, right? If you are very hot, walking up and down the place, males can tell you that the testicles also will get hot. So the idea is that the scrotum can relax and move the testes further away from the body so that they don't get trapped near the body and overheat. Hence the ability to relax. Now, obviously, these things evolved before human beings developed clothes. So, so that this would have been much more effective before people were wearing tight-up pants, right? Now, on the other hand, if it's a cold environment, everything has to shrink in and get held closer to the body to keep warm, right? Now, we also mentioned the cremaster muscle here, right? And it says these are skeletal muscle fibers and control the position of the scrotum and the testes. As it says, when it's cold or a man is aroused, the muscle contracts, pulling the testes closer to the body for warmth, right? So sexual arousal, the testes get moved closer to the body to warm up the sperm, basically, to getting them ready to go, right? Now you'll notice this structure here coming out called a spermatic cord, and it goes in the testes from the body. The spermatic cord contains blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, nerve endings, all sorts of things. It's very similar to what you have happening with, for example, the kidney or the lungs, where you have one area of that organ where the important structures are going in and out, right? So the spermatic cord now is going in and out, right? And of course, this is occurring in one place, right? Now, we already mentioned epididymis, but let's get a bit more detail. So as it says, there's a long tube, 6 meters long. So when you uncoil one of these epididymi, it is basically almost 4 times the height of a normal person, right? So they're pretty long. But they're coiled up, of course, to fit. Now it mentions that a sperm can leave the testes are immature, as I mentioned earlier, and incapable of fertilizing the ova. So remember, in the epididymis, you're storing the sperm. Sperm can't really do anything with it at the moment, right? And we also mentioned that the mature sperm is stored at the end of the epididymis, right? So it's all good. It says the spermatic cord contains the proximal ductus deferens, testicular arteries and veins, we mentioned blood vessels already, lymph vessels, the nerves, which we mentioned already, cremaster muscles, as well as a connective tissue covering, right? Now, in order for the sperm to leave the testes and make its way through the reproductive system, it has to, of course, pass through the ductus deferens, which, of course, is the same as the vas deferens, right? I assume everybody remembers vas deferens from CSEC, right? Now, the vas deferens is a fibrous muscular tube that is continuous with epididymis. So it merges into the lower part of the epididymis, right? And sperm has to travel through that to get into the grinder, to get in now to your rest of your reproductive passage. Now, because of that, we have developed an operation called a vasectomy, right? So when males don't want to have babies anymore, or when their wives demand it, the doctor, I'm assuming it's a doctor, will go in, cut the vas deferens, which means, of course, the doctor has to slice open the spermatic cord, tease out until it locates the ductus deferens, pull it out, cut it, fold the ends over, and sew the ends closed. Then shove everything back and sew it up, and then you move on, right? It is a more complicated operation than you might think, but it is also something that is done on a very regular basis, right?
Sir,
Yes.
can this be reversed?
Okay. In the past, it was pretty much impossible to reverse. These days, yeah. I'm told that the success rate for reversing a vasectomy is up to 60% on the high end, right? Because there is going to be a certain amount of scarring, etc., as after you cut the vas deferens, right? That said, these days we can still harvest sperm from the testes. So cutting the vas deferens doesn't stop the body from producing the sperm. It just means the sperm has nowhere to go. If a man has a vasectomy and he says the boy really wants another child, then they have to go the natural route It's probably not going to cut it, pun intended. Instead, they will have sperm harvested from the testicles and then implanted, right? All right. So now remember, vas deferens goes from the epididymis and go and merges with the rest of the tubular system, right? As it says, it enters the abdominal pelvic cavity through the inguinal canal and passes along the lateral pelvic wall and goes behind the bladder on its way to the prostate gland, right? Now, before it reaches the prostate gland, it says each ductus deferens enlarges to form a structure called an ampulla, right? Now, we said already that sperm is stored in the epididymis, the lower portion of the epididymis. But you can also store sperm in the lower portion of the vas deferens as well. Now remember, this sperm that you're storing here is pretty much ready to go. Okay? That's the most mature sperm. That sperm is a ready sperm. That's the one, therefore, that will, when the ejaculation does occur, will essentially be in first position. Or if you know, racing, pole position, right? Now it says each ductus deferens at the ampulla joins the duct from the adjacent seminal vesicle to form a short ejaculatory duct. So let's look at the picture here. So the idea here is that the vas deferens goes from the testes up into the body, goes behind the bladder, right? And where it enlarges to form the ampulla, and then the ampulla merges with tube from the structure called a seminal vesicle. Okay, so they're merging together there. Now the seminal vesicle is going to be extremely important because the seminal vesicle is where the term semen comes from. The seminal vesicle produces the largest volume of fluids that are added to the sperm. Okay, literally, without the seminal fluid, the sperm will not become active, even if they're mature. Right? So you have to mix now the raw sperm, if you want to think of it that way, with seminal fluid. And that helps to activate the mature sperm. Right? So that when they're deposited wherever, they can start to swim, right? Now, once you've mixed now, there's a hand up. Carolina.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon again. So I want to know, for persons that have done vasectomy, right?
Mm.
Is there a high chance of them having prostate cancer?
To the best of my knowledge, there's no increase in risk of prostate cancer from having a vasectomy. Here's the thing, right? There are a few studies that seem to suggest that the more often a male ejaculates, the lower the risk overall of prostate cancer will be, right? So some people might believe that if you have a vasectomy, then your ejaculate does not contain any sperm, so maybe that it means that you're not pumping a larger volume of fluid through the tubules, and maybe this could increase your risk of the prostate crushing down on the urethra. Okay, there's not a
Okay.
lot of evidence of that, right? But still, there is evidence that males should really ejaculate on fairly regularly because it does seem to reduce the chance of prostate problems overall, right? I was reading through this one study that suggested males should be ejaculating at least 5 times a week. For some males, 5 times a day is normal for them, so I guess 5 times a week should be perfectly fine. So there is some correlation between frequent ejaculation and a reduction in risk of prostate problems. So that is actually true. All right. Now, let me, you know what, tell her, I'm going to use this diagram. Let's do a quick trace through from, right? So remember now, we are here where we are mixing now the seminal vesicle secretions at the ampulla with the sperm. So now so the seminal fluid plus the sperm gives us the semen. And remember, you have hormones in the seminal fluid. You have things like prostaglandins in there. You have also fructose, believe it or not, there's sugar in there. The sugar, of course, helps to feed the sperm, right? So when they become active, they have an energy source. And the seminal fluid is also slightly alkaline, right? Now this semen will then pass through what is called the urethra, okay? And that starts here at the prostate. So this is the prostatic urethra. It passes right through the prostate gland, which is one of the stupidest evolutionary decisions I've ever seen. There's no logical reason why the urethra needs to pass through the prostate gland. The problems men have with prostate is due to this very poor evolutionary configuration. As a man gets older, and this is pretty much all men, the prostate gland starts to swell. As that prostate gland starts to swell, it squeezes down on the prostatic urethra because, of course, it's passing right through the prostate gland. So over time, the male's prostate is going to narrow his urethra, which increases the difficulty of urination, ejaculation, these kind of things as they go along, right? Men have been known to have serious medical complications because the prostate swells so much, it essentially squeezes the urethra shut, right? And since the urethra is how you also get rid of urine, it means that that poor guy can't pass urine anymore, which of course can lead to death. Can a male go a year or two without ejaculation? Male of what age? Because if they're young enough, they'll just do a nocturnal emission. Nocturnal emissions are a thing, right? Basically, the younger male is, even when they're sleeping, they might be releasing, if you follow what I'm saying, right? Obviously, as you get older, you males have more control over these kind of things. And so if it's an older male, sure. I mean, there are guys who go through their entire lives without any sort of sexual anything, right? How they do it, I don't know. But most of them are like monks and these kind of things. So yeah, it's definitely possible. Now, once your semen enters the prostatic urethra, the prostate gland actually does have a purpose. It's not just there to kill you off, right? You produce prostate fluid or prostatic fluid. And that fluid is a very alkaline fluid. And it is also rich in minerals like calcium, etc., right? This fluid now mixes with the semen. And the reason for the fluid is that it continues to activate sperm for one, but it also ensures that the semen is relatively alkaline. And the semen has to be alkaline because the pH of the average vagina is going to be acidic. And the reason why the vaginal pH tends to be acidic, of course, is because bacteria, right? Think about what a vagina is. It's a moist, warm hole. You can't think of a better place for bacteria to want to be, right? So how do you counteract that? You produce vaginal juices or vaginal secretions, however you want to put it, that are acidic. And the acidity of these vaginal secretions ensures that even though otherwise you have an almost optimal environment for bacterial growth down there, that the bacteria have a hard time reproducing, right? But it also means that the sperm have a hard time living. So that is one of the reasons one of the major reasons why you're going to have very alkaline fluid coming from the prostate. So when now you introduce the semen into the vagina, the alkalinity of the semen helps to somewhat counteract the acidity of the vagina, right? Now, so you add the prostatic fluid to your semen, you then pass that now through the body wall. And when the urethra is passing through the body wall, we call that the membranous urethra. And within the and as you can see, within the body wall, you have these glands called bulbourethral glands. Look at them, bulbo because they kind of like bulbs. And of course, urethral because they're associated with the urethra. Okay? So bulbourethral glands. And these glands produce quite a bit of mucus of all things, right? The idea here is that the mucus that is being added to the semen is going to act as actually a lubricant, okay? You may have heard terms like pre-cum, for example. When you have a small amount of sperm in a little bit of fluid on the head of the penis, most of that fluid is actually going to be mucus, right? So the head of the penis essentially will try to lubricate itself before the sex act, of course, to ensure that it can penetrate and deposit its load, right? So that's what you need your bulbourethral glands to do. In the membranous urethra, they're adding essentially lubricant to the semen to help to ease things along, shall we say, right? Then now that mixture now enters the penile urethra. Now, obviously, the penile urethra runs through the penis, which of course means that the length of the penile urethra is going to vary, okay? Essentially from person to person. Generally speaking, 18 centimeters-ish you're looking at, right? Now, can a woman become pregnant? Of course, a woman can become pregnant by pre-cum. It is not a normal thing because the percentage of active sperm in pre-ejaculatory fluid, which is the proper name for it, is extremely low, right? But as we said at Jamaica, puss and dog have the same luck. I think I may have told you guys about this girl who got pregnant as a virgin. I think we spoke about this already, didn't we? When she and her male friend were messing around and he ejaculated onto her underwear. And those little sperm were so tenacious, they swam right through the underwear and went for the gold. And she got pregnant even though she was a virgin. So yeah. Right? Anyway. So once the semen enters your penile urethra, you're not adding anything else to it at this point. You're just getting rid of it, right? So it passes through the penile urethra until it gets to the external urethral meatus. Remember, this word is not meatus, it's meatus, right? And at this point, of course, it then leaves the body to go wherever it's going to go. 90% of the time, in someone hand middle. Anyway, now, this is just going to summarize what we just went through, right? So you can read it at your leisure. It also has the glands that we mentioned, and these are called the accessory glands. So the seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, and the bulbourethral gland. Please remember what they do, what they secrete, and where they're located, right? All right. I want to know something weird about these statues you see here, these Greek statues, and they all have these little tiny penises. Do you know the reason for this? Apparently, the Greeks believed strongly that a man's IQ was inversely proportional to the size of his penis. So the smarter a man was, the smaller his penis was supposed to be. And since Greeks were very intellectual, all their statues would have been of intelligent people. Therefore, they had tiny penises. Right? So what can I tell you? At some point in history, the style was small penis. Right? But that style has apparently faded away. Intelligence is useless. Wow, Daniel. Wow. Anyway, I mentioned seminal vesicles here as well. So please read through just to refamiliarize yourself, right? All right. It's so funny. So that's why so much fool of baby. All right. And woman like that's I guess that's why the woman them like to fool them. Anyway, now just to recap some of the things we said about the semen, right? We mentioned it's alkaline, right? Now, I didn't mention this here. It says about 60% of it is made up of seminal fluid. So I didn't give an actual number. So here you have it, 60%. We mentioned the bulbourethral gland contributes a small portion, but it is mostly lubricant in the form of mucus, right? Now it says here that the male ejaculates around 1.5 to 6 mils of fluid. Doesn't sound like a lot of fluid, right? 6 mils. They're between 50 and 150 million sperm per mil, though, right? So a male that is ejaculating 6 mils is essentially dropping 1 billion sperm almost, right? So clearly this is on the very, very high end, right? Now, generally speaking, if a male has a sperm count of 10 to 20 million sperm per mil, right? So instead of having the 50 to 150, they will have like 10 or so. Those men have very, very reduced fertility. It's not impossible for them to get a woman pregnant, but it is the chances are very, very low. Right? So really realistically, a man that is putting out less than the equivalent of 150 million sperm per shot. Baby is unlikely. As a matter of fact, if you're generating 100 million or below per shot, you're effectively sterile. It would be extremely unlikely that a male that is putting out 150 million sperm per ejaculation can get anybody pregnant. You know, that sounds weird to say that, but 150 million is not a lot. Most sperm will die a horrible death, right? Which we'll explain later. Okay, so what is a penis? Here, if you ever want to describe a penis, here's what it is. It's a cylindrical, pendant organ located anterior to the scrotum and functions as a transfer mechanism of sperm to the vagina. Okay? Now, if anybody asks you what is a penis, you can now describe it, at least in a scientific way. Right? That said, the penis is kind of a funny structure. Here's what I mean by that. It is one of only 2 types of muscle that we call hydrostatic muscle you'll find in the body. So hydrostatic muscle. Hydro, of course, you think of fluid, right? And static as in state. The idea here is that in order for the penis to contract, it has to be filled with blood, right? Otherwise, it stays in its relaxed state or its uncontracted state, right? So transfer of blood to the penis is required for it to function, okay? Within the penis itself, you're going to have 3 columns of tissue, and these tissue columns receive the blood, right? You have 2 dorsal columns, right, which are called the corpus cavernosa, and then you have 1 single midline column called the corpus spongiosa, right? So those are the 3 main sections. So here we go. We have corpus cavernosa at the sides, So the lateral and an anterior and medial, you have the corpus spongiosum, right? So these guys have to fill with blood in order for an erection to occur. Now, here's something weird. Well, maybe not weird too, but most mammals have a bone in the penis, right? Which helps the penis to stay erect. So most mammals have a bone in their penis, but not humans, right? We don't have the penis bone. So because of the male can't maintain erection for hours on end, you know. Rats, for example, male rats have these huge bones in the penis, and they can keep going and going and going, right? As to why we lost the bone, I don't know. I wouldn't have minded it, but let's move on. Now, the penis itself has three basic parts, okay? We have the root, right? Body, and the glands, which is the head of the penis, okay? The root, of course, is now looking at where the penis meets the body, okay? When I say body, I mean your actual physical body, right? So it attaches, as we say here, to the pubic arch. Now, the body now is essentially the cylindrical length of the penis. And it is what we say is the pendant portion. It's portion that hangs down like a pendant, right? And now the head of the penis, that expanded part is called the glans, right? And those are three main components. I mentioned here the corpus spongiosum actually expands on the distal end to form the glands of the penis, right? So obviously the corpus spongiosum is forming the glands of the penis. Hopefully it makes sense to you that the urethra has to pass, therefore, through the corpus spongiosum, right? So the corpus spongiosum has the urethra running right through it, ending in the glands at your at your external urethral orifice. So basically, that is where the semen leaves the body, right? Now, it mentions here that the glans is normally covered by a loose fold of skin called a prepuce or foreskin, right? Now, see, this makes sense to you. Because human beings have developed this very weird habit of cutting it off. The foreskin folds over the glands because it acts as a means of protection to sensitive tissue. Okay? Can you imagine? First of all, remember what I said to you. Clothes have not been with humanity forever. Okay? Human beings have been wearing clothes for probably about 100,000 years. Not a long time. Right? So the majority of your ancestors walked around buck naked. Now, can you imagine, as a male, pushing your way through bush and brush with the ding-a-ling that's hanging in the air with no protection over it? Every macajuke scrape right across you. That's terrible. So the prepuce evolved to cover up your delicate bits to reduce the chance of things going stabby into your private business, right? Somebody mentioned something about hygiene purpose. For removing foreskin, there's no hygiene purpose for removing foreskin. Why? Because you just wash it. That argument makes about as much sense as me saying everybody must have their head shaved because of hygiene purpose. Why? Because I don't trust the wash your hair. Let's just cut it off. That makes no logical sense, right? Obviously, adults can take care of themselves, right? So there is no actual medical reason to remove the foreskin. There actually is a medical reason to keep it. Because one of the things that happens when you remove the foreskin is that the foreskin helps also to protect the glands from abrasion. So although without the foreskin, you can imagine the glands is constantly banging around on the underwear, rubbing against it, and that actually reduces the sensitivity of the glands, right? So there's actually more of a reason to keep it than to get rid of it. Anyway, erection, how does it happen? Erection, remember, as I said to you, is caused by the influx of blood, right? So blood flows into the corpus spongiosum and the corpus cavernosum, causing the erection to occur. Why? Because hydrostatic muscle, right? Now, this process is also controlled by nerves that are running around the sacral region. So there are nerves passing through the sacrum that are utilized to open up the blood vessels that will lead blood to flow into the penis, okay? If a man has back surgery of some sort and lower back surgery and damages these nerves, once those sacral nerves are damaged, then there's no way to send a signal to cause blood to be directed into the penis. So that man will now have erectile dysfunction. That man will be impotent, right? Impotent means, of course, the man cannot get an erection, right? So the sperm and everything might be perfectly fine, but if you don't have a mechanism of delivering the sperm, you're kind of dark, right? Now, also, when guys get prostate problems in the past, and the prostate has swollen, they put you under the knife, and they would do prostate surgery to cut away at the prostate to give relief, right? The problem is that in the past, prostate surgery, because of all the cutting, sometimes they cut nerves that are passing through that area, like, of course, or nerve head causing erection. So a man could go and have a swollen prostate, the prostate surgery, and end up, of course, with impotence, right? Because of the damaging of the nerves in the sacral region. And it was a real problem. It still is a problem. So many a man, when they're told, hey, your prostate is growing out of control, we need to go in and we need to carve bits of it out. The guy will say, oh, you want to kill me nature? So many a man will say, you know what? Maybe prostate cancer is not that bad. Now let's see how long I can live with it. And men have been known to do that. They'd rather lose their life than lose their nature, right? I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I understand their position. Anyway. Now, we're going to mention now formation of sperm real quick, as well as two important cells associated with that process, okay? Formation of sperm is referred to as spermatogenesis. Sperm production, spermatogenesis. Genesis, of course, is making things. Spermato is what you're making, right? So formation of sperm, and this normally starts during puberty, right? I'm gonna go until 6 if there's no objection, right? So I'm gonna go until 6 if there's no objection. So spermatogenesis, sperm production, starts around puberty in males, right? Well, of course, it has to be males. Females don't produce sperm, right? Regardless of what you hear from American TV. Now, here's the thing with spermatogenesis. For the most part, it is continuous throughout a man's life. Once it starts, it does not stop. So 12-year-old is making sperm. The 105-year-old is still making sperm as well. Making less, sure. The quality also is going to be less, but they're still making it. Okay? Now, you have these special cells called Sertoli cells found within the testes. And these cells are designed now to help to nurture and mature sperm. Tessinique, you have a question?
So, sir, so like how young women who are dating older men, right? So that's why they always stay with them.
You lost me. What do you mean they always stay with them?
Cause they're more like you say like they're not really sexually active because sperm count decrease. So
But sperm count doesn't have anything to do with sexual activity. Remember,
so
a
sir,
man being sterile doesn't stop him from getting an erection. Now, generally speaking, the way things work is this. First of all, normally when you see these young women with these older men, you realize that older men have money, right? These women ain't there for no love, right?
All the time.
Uh-huh. I have no further statement to make except uh-huh. Now, why would these men bother taking up these women if they had no ability to perform? Because let's be perfectly honest. What does a young woman have that an older man wants? It's not between your ears. That's a clue. Hence, he must have the ability to perform. Right? The women want the money, the men want the honey. That's the way the world works, right? So even though as a man gets older, of course, his desire for sex might diminish, generally speaking, does not go away. Right? So maybe instead of doing it twice a day, he's doing it a few times a week instead. But he still wants the woman around to do so, right? Length of the penis has nothing at all to do with pregnancy, right? Well, okay, let me rephrase. The length of the penis might have something to do with how frequently you engage in activities of the sexual nature, which might increase your chance of getting pregnant. So maybe from that perspective, sure, right? Now, Leydig cells. Leydig cells, of course, are going to produce testosterone, right? And remember, these cells are not in the seminiferous tubules themselves, they're around them, okay? So when you look at that section through the tubule, here we have so this is a seminiferous tubule over here, so here's another one here, and here's another one. So we have 3 tubules. So they're supposed to be round like that, right? But of course, there's a section through them. In between them now, you have your Leydig cells. So when you're producing the testosterone can fuse from this area here into the seminiferous tubules and trigger spermatogenesis, right? Now, there are important cells within your seminiferous tubules that are going to lead to the production of sperm. And we're going to talk about them. This here is a section through a seminiferous tubule, okay? And here are the important cells I want to note. 1, I want to note spermatogonia. These are diploid cells, which of course is 2N, right? The spermatogonia produce what we call primary spermatocytes, right? And the primary spermatocytes produce cells called secondary spermatocytes. And then the secondary spermatocytes produce spermatids. And the spermatids are going to form the spermatozoa. And those are basically your immature sperm, okay? All right, so let's look at this lovely diagram here now. This flow chart now is talking all about reproduction. So we start out here with what we call a primordial germ cell. Go ahead, Zanel.
Sir, you said that the spermatids they differentiate and then they mature into
So the spermatids
mature.
form the spermatozoa.
But one sperm, if form, I end a spermatogenesis.
No, we're about to run through that right now. So we have our primordial germ cell, okay? Our primordial germ cell is going to form the spermatogonia, right? Which is basically our first step, okay? Primordial germ cells, when the fetus is forming, you make those. Then hit puberty, spermatogonia are formed. Spermatogonia now are going to go through mitosis. Remember mitosis, right? Mitosis, you go from 2N, one cell with 2N, you end up with two cells, both are 2N, right? So one diploid cell gives you two diploid cells. Now, this is where it's a little different from your normal mitosis. Here's what's a little different. One of the two cells you make is going to stay as a spermatogonia. Okay? So mitosis gives you two spermatogonia. One of them you keep as a spermatogonia. The next one is turned into a primary spermatocyte. Okay? Now, this means if you have a million spermatogonia, when they replicate, you still have a million spermatogonia. So the number of spermatogonia does not go down, right? Because you take one cell and make two, and then you keep one of the two you've made, right? What changes instead is the other cell. So you get a primary spermatocyte. This cell is diploid, so that's 2N. And then this cell undergoes meiosis. So you go from 2N to N. So that goes from diploid to haploid, right? Remember why this is important. In order for sexual reproduction to work, you have to take half of the mother's DNA, half of the father's DNA, and then combine them to give you a new offspring, right? So you have to take the male DNA, split it in half. So that is what meiosis is for. So meiosis now takes the primary spermatocyte, one of them, and you end up now with 4 sperm. So one cell gives you 4, right? And you have millions of primary spermatocytes every day working in the male body. Which of course is why you can generate so many sperm. Okay? All right. So the primary spermatocyte first splits into 2 cells, which are the secondary spermatocytes. And each secondary spermatocyte splits into 2 other cells, which are the spermatids. And the spermatids, of course, are haploid. They have half the DNA of the original primary spermatocyte up here, right? And these spermatids then undergo something called differentiation. So each one of these cells grows a tail, it starts to grow a head to form the sperm, okay? And then these initially form the spermatozoa. And then the spermatozoa eventually forms the proper sperm, okay? Now, all of this should sound very, very, very familiar to you because you all did this at CSEC, right? At least I assume you did, right? Now, so remember the spermatids, right, as it says here, when they form, are similar to epithelial cells or epithelioid cells. They differentiate and elongate to form spermatozoa. The sperm forms the head and the tail, right? And the head contains a nucleus, cytoplasm, cell membrane. The sperm itself, right, is one of the simplest cells you'll find in the body. Oh, this is CAPE? I haven't taught CAPE in ages. I don't remember. All right. Chris, when last I teach CSEC? 2011, a long time. Anyway, so the sperm is like one of the simplest cells you can get. There's not much in there at all. Okay, you have a head with a cytoplasm in there and a nucleus, and some you have a neck which attaches it to the body, and the body of the sperm. Let me just show it to you. It's full of mitochondria. Why do you need the mitochondria? Because they make ATP for powering the tail. The sperm is nothing more than a delivery mechanism for the nucleus, right? That's all the sperm good for. All the other resources with regards to forming the embryo, forming the fetus, growing the fetus into a baby, all of that stuff, that is all done by the female. The male takes no part in that whatsoever. So the male is just contributing one nucleus to the process. And then you all will take it from there, right? Now, that brings me now to this structure called an acrosome. At the head of the sperm, you have a little cavity called the acrosome. And in that cavity, you have an enzyme, okay? And it is a form of what we call a Hyl, Hyl, uronidase. Oh. It's later on in the slide. Hyaluronidase. This enzyme is very, very important. When the sperm comes into contact with the egg, the hyaluronidase is used to burrow. This help the sperm burrow through the eggshell and then deposit now the sperm nucleus into the egg, right? So you need the acrosome to help get that nucleus into the egg cell. Why do you need to go through all of this rigmarole? Why you need to be melting the way through eggshell is very simple. Apparently, living things, organisms have been doing a lot of dipping their wick into the wrong pool. You know, dipping into the wrong pool. And by that I mean, it happens so often that the wrong species are getting together that evolution had to develop a mechanism to prevent it from happening too often. The reason you have an enzyme in the acrosome, hyaluronidase, is this. The hyaluronidase is designed to dissolve a one particular substrate, and the substrate is found in the eggshell, right? Only members of the same species or very similar species will be compatible. So if you take sperm from a dog and put it into a cat, or if your dog just fancies your cat, it's a thing that happens. There are videos, let's move on. And he deposits in that cat. When that sperm gets the cat's eggs and tries to burrow into the eggs of that cat, the hyaluronidase that is being produced by the dog sperm cannot dissolve the egg of the cat. Therefore, no fertilization. Okay? So you will never have a cat dog being born. That's not gonna happen. Right? And thankfully so. Let's be honest, if it wasn't for the case, you'd have a whip a goat man and run up and down the place. We won't even get into that, right? But it's a thing, right? Anyway, so the acrosome is extremely important. By the way, do you know in Argentina, apparently this is a real thing, that it is not unusual for a boy's first time to be with a donkey. It's a thing that they do over there. It's just, it's just one of those things, no big deal. Everybody doing it, Anyway, Moving on, I won't get into it, but apparently it's a thing, you can look into it. And apparently it's not them alone, I guess. Colombia will do that too. Right? So it's a thing. Now, we mentioned sperm maturing in the epididymis already, right? As this is after formation of the seminiferous tubules, the sperm requires 7 days to pass through the epididymis, right? So once you produce those sperm, you pass them to the epididymis. Remember, the epididymis is 6 meters long. It's long. It takes them days to pass through and finally get to the bottom of the epididymis, where you're connected to the vas deferens. Not until the sperm will work its way all the way down over the course of those days. Only then will the sperm now be mature, right? And as I said, after the sperm have been in the epididymis for 18 to 24 hours, they develop the capability of motility, right? So the sperm can move at this point. But there are proteins in epididymis that shut off the tails. So even though the sperm can swim, they won't swim, all right? Now, as it says, there are 2 testes of a human can form 120 million sperm per day easy, right? Only a small amount is going to be stored in epididymis at any given time. The majority of it is going to be stored in the vas deferens. So as you're maturing the sperm and it enters epididymis, remember the vas deferens is joined to it. So the mature sperm now moves into the vas deferens, sits there waiting eagerly to do its duty, right? The sperm are kept inactive, of course, while they're in the vas deferens because you don't want them swimming all over the place. So just the way they were turned off in the epididymis, they're turned off also in your vas deferens. Now, during ejaculation, when they're moving now from the vas deferens and moving now up into the seminiferous tubule, that is when now you're going to reactivate the sperm. So they're mature, they don't shut off, right? As it mentions here, Sertoli cells and the epithelium of the epididymis secrete nutrients which contain testosterone and estrogens. Notice estrogens, right? So when I said to you when you're doing endocrine system that every hormone a male has, a female has, and vice versa, even if they don't do exactly the same thing. And males with no estrogen are sterile. You need the estrogen to help the sperm develop properly, right? So if you're an extremely manly man with no estrogen at all, you're also a sterile man, okay? Now, you all know what to label the male reproductive system. We won't waste time on that, right? Now, just to reiterate some things. As it says here, the mature sperm are motile, so they can move, and are capable of fertilizing the eggs, the ova at this stage, right? But their activity is going to be enhanced now in an alkaline pH. So by making the seminal fluid, the semen, alkaline, it's easier for the sperm to become active, right? And of course, that means that they're also depressed by acidic environments, right? Now, for the most part, the lifespan of a sperm is on average 1 to 2 days, okay? That said, you always have a few sperm that are still pushing it up 3 days later. So realistically, 1 to 3 days is reasonable, right? That, of course, now means that a woman can have sex on Monday and get pregnant on Wednesday, right? So if she has sex on Monday and there's no egg available, sperm can sit there and wait for an egg to come half a week later, right? So you have some women who do the quote-unquote rhythm method, where they say, boy, they try to determine when they have when you're ovulating and when you're not ovulating. They can have sex when you're not ovulating because they can't get pregnant. Please remember, sperm can't wait for you. Right? This is one of the reasons why the rhythm method, for pretty much everybody, eventually it fails. Right? I keep telling people this, women in particular. Nature wants you to get pregnant. Right? There are no two bones about it. Nature wants you to be pregnant. Nature goes out of its way to mess with you, to make you want to get pregnant. Right? So something as simple as, oh, you shouldn't be ovulating today. No problem. Do your thing. The sperm will wait for you. Right? Anyway. Abstinence is one of the worst forms of birth control. Why? Because nobody uses it properly. All right? Let's be perfectly honest. How many people are able to maintain abstinence throughout life? Come on, please. Give me a break. Abstinence is temporary at best, right? Now, as it mentions here, seminal vesicles are going to secrete mucoid material, as in mucus, containing fructose, citric acid, and other nutrients that the sperm can use to stay alive, right? So even when they're deposited in the vagina, the seminal fluid has packed them a lunch to send them on their way, right? It also contains, we mentioned prostaglandins already, and also contains fibrinogen. And the prostaglandins help to prepare the sperm for activity to get the woman pregnant, right? As it says here, by reacting to cervical mucus, make it more receptive to sperm movement. So the prostaglandins will help the sperm essentially swim through the cervix and get into the uterus, right? And it can even cause, as it says, the reverse or backward peristaltic contractions of the uterus, which help to suck the sperm up, right? Now, here's the thing. As I just said to you, your body is desperately trying to get you pregnant, right? How many a woman is there having them fun, reach their orgasm? You know, I've heard so many stories, you know, then they say, oh, we're going to do the pull-out thing, and the woman reaches her orgasm, and the man is about to reach he's about to pull out, and all of a sudden, leg wrap around him. Like, what the hell? It's like a vice, can't come out. And what happens? He reaches his orgasm. She then reaches hers, and her muscular contractions are working their way through the vagina. Her contractions are sucking the sperm up into the uterus, right? Which, of course, makes it easier for the sperm to get into the fallopian tubes. So keep that in mind, all right? And sometimes, and I've been told by women that, boy, they don't even realize that they're doing it. They don't even realize that they're doing it, if you want to believe that or not. But we leave that alone, right? All right. Mentions prostate gland already, milky alkaline fluid. It is filled with calcium ions, right? And citrate ions and phosphate, as we mentioned, the minerals already, right? As well as clotting enzymes like fibrinolysin. And the alkaline fluid is going to be needed to help, of course, to neutralize the pH of the vagina. Remember we said it was acidic, right? That said, when a woman is ovulating, the pH of her vagina rises. So it becomes less acidic. Why? To get you pregnant. Remember, the whole purpose of all of this is not for you to have a good time on a weekend. It's to get you pregnant. All right? So your body goes out of the way to make it easier for you to get pregnant. So when you're ovulating, even the pH of the vagina is increasing to make it easier to get you pregnant. The sperm live longer in you that way so that they can wait on the egg to come, right? So that said, what does the alkaline fluid do? So as I said, successful fertilization of an ovum Why? Because you controlling pH, right? As in neutralize the acidity, right? Helps to neutralize the acidity of fluids, enhances motility of the sperm. So it's safer for the sperm to move to the vagina, and the sperm can move faster, right? Now, we already spoke about what's in the semen already, so we won't do it again. And we spoke about the numbers of the sperm and those kind of things. I do want to mention capacitation again, though, right? As I said, sperm in epididymis is kept inactive. Remember, they're mature, but you keep them shut off. By the way, does anybody know what the success rate of the birth control pill is? You know, what's the chance of a woman getting pregnant at the end of a year of a year on birth control pill? It is closer to 80% than it is to 90. So stay there. Right? Over a course of 5 years, almost 60% of women will get pregnant on the birth control pill. And it is not because there's anything wrong with the pill. It is usually because of the way women take the pill. Right? For example, do you remember what I said to you about your body trying to get you pregnant? When a woman is with a partner that she has decided that she's quite fond of and would like to have babies with, weirdly enough, she gets very forgetful of certain things, if you follow where I'm going with this. Right? Simple as that. Hey, you just keep forgetting, Sure. I'll just take 2 tomorrow, and then boom, you're pregnant. Oh my goodness, how did that happen? It's a thing that happens, right? Because even your brain gets you at that stage. The man too nice, your brain start fight against you, right? Anyway. So now, as it says here, sperm in the epididymis is kept inactive, remember? So it doesn't go swimming around. They're mature, but they're inactive in our ducts, right? Once they get into the female genital tract, now they become activated, right? This is capacitation. And this can occur over a period of an hour or up to 10 hours, right? It mentions that uterine and fallopian fluids can wash away inhibitory factors that were keeping the sperm inactive. Now, obviously, the closer a woman is to ovulation, the more of her own fluids will remove the inactivity fluids from sperm to increase the activation levels, right? While the spermatozoa remain in the fluid in the genital ducts, they're exposed to many floating vesicles from seminiferous tubules containing large amounts of cholesterol. Cholesterol is added to the cell membrane, covering the acrosome, making it rough to prevent the release of its enzyme. So the sperm is deposited. The acrosome is very delicate. What happens? You cover it now with cholesterol. So as the sperm is swimming through the woman's reproductive tract, no bumps or scrapes will burst open before it gets to where it's going, right? Because of that cholesterol. It mentions that the sperm membrane becomes more permeable to calcium ions, which also increases their movement and helps to release enzymes from the acrosome. So the sperms are swimming faster now, right? And once the sperm gets to the egg, it can release now the acrosomal chemicals even faster. Yes, Daniel?
Sir, I was watching this video and it was saying that there are, I think it said white blood cells that are within the female
Yes, they are. And
reproductive
they happily
system
view the sperm
that
as intruders and kill them.
sanitizes the sperm.
It doesn't
Okay.
sanitize them and kill them. By sanitize, I'm pretty sure that meant it murders them. The woman's immune system does not deactivate because there's sperm there, not bacteria, right? The woman's immune system treats the sperm as bacterial invaders. And that is one of the reasons why not very many sperm actually reach the egg. out of 250 million sperm, maybe a few dozen will get to the egg. On the high end, 100 or so might get there, right? So it's a massacre. The woman's immune system is massacring the sperm as it goes along, right? That's why you need such large numbers. All right. Now, something I want to mention with regard to sperm. An interesting fact that you might find interesting later on in life. Sperm, of course, contain an X or a Y chromosome in the DNA, right? Now, what scientists have noticed is this. Sperm containing Y chromosomes move faster than the sperm containing X chromosomes. Whereas the sperm with the X chromosome, live longer than the ones with the Y chromosome. Okay? Why is this important? Let's say you decide, hey, you want a male baby first. Remember, it is the male that determines the sex of the child, not the female, right? So if you know you want a male first, a woman simply has sex a day after she ovulates. That, of course, means the egg is there, the egg is ready. And since the faster swimmers tend to be the male, the Y carrying sperm, chances are she will have a male baby. She wants a female instead, and she has to have sex a day or two before she ovulates. So the sperm is sitting there waiting. And as they wait, the ones with the Y chromosome will tend to die off first. So that, of course, means chance of her having a female baby increase. That's a thing that actually does work. Okay?
Sir, could you please repeat back that part
Which part?
about the baby gender?
If you want a male, have sex on the day you ovulate or the day after you ovulate. You want a female, have sex 2 to 3 days before you ovulate. It is
So I think that's accurate
increasing
though.
the chances. It's not 100%, but I have had students in the past, once the pastor you take it, they do that and they say, hey, they got what they were looking for, so who am I to judge, right? It's a thing that works, right?
Sir, the reason why I asked now is because I have a daughter and she was conceived on the day I was ovulating. So that's why I asked.
I mean, remember, we're increasing our chances. And are you sure it was on the exact day you're ovulating?
Yes, sir.
Well, more than likely what happened is that you had sex and then you ovulated, which means that the sperm are already waiting when the egg got there. Remember, and it takes the
No,
egg.
sir, it was the exact
Yeah,
date,
but
sir. I
remember,
write
it
it
takes
down.
the egg a day or two to make its way down the fallopian tube, right? So it still takes a day or two for that egg to move along. So it still makes perfect sense, right? Now, as I said, this thing is simply going to increase the probability. Nothing is 100% in life. But I've spoken to enough past students who have done it and it works so fine for them that, hey, I'm willing to believe what was written in the paper, right? So that is my advice. Will it was the 100%? Of course not. Nothing is in life. But if you really want a male baby first, that's the best way to do it. Right? Of course, you could also do what you call in vitro fertilization too. Right? All right. All right, we're about 10 minutes before 6. We went through these hormones in endocrine, so we're not going to bother with them again, right? Instead, let's move on from the hormone part. So on Monday, I want to do a class at 7 or 6 or 7. Either one is fine with me. I'll do like 90 minutes, okay? When you guys have determined which time you prefer, 6 or 7, shoot me a message so I know what to prepare for, right? All right. Now, we're not going to worry so much about this aspect of it here.
There is a
Sorry?
Yes, go ahead.
Could it be before that time or it does have to be either 6 or 7?
It can be earlier. I mean, I'm free for the latter half of the Monday. So anything after 3 o'clock, I'm free. So you all just determine what is your preference and let me know. Now, so let's talk about some of the effects of testosterone. Secondary sexual characteristics. Well, I mean, I think we spoke about these already. Well, not the baldness. This is for older people, so we won't bother with that for now. Right? But all of these, I'm sure you've come across already, so we don't need to worry so much about them. Now, female reproductive system, right, is much more complicated than in a lot of ways than the male reproductive system is. Okay? And it is the very complexity of the female reproductive system that makes it easier to block it than the male one. Okay? You must have realized that there's many a contraceptive method for females, but there are not really very many for males. That is because, generally speaking, when you try to use a hormone-based contraceptive on a male and disrupt things like testosterone, etc., it causes a wide scale or many unforeseen effects on the male. For example, the last male reproductive pill that they were talking about, I don't know if you all remember, but this was about 3 years ago. There was like this big deal about, oh, they found have a male pill and they carried it over clinical testing. Right? I was going to be this big thing about males cannot control the blah blah blah. Out of the participants, I think is what? Almost 20%. No lie. About almost half of the males apparently fell into depression. Serious depression. Some of them committed suicide. Right? Because the hormones that they were using had significant impacts on the males because the one hormone is affecting so many different systems in the male, right? Females seem to be more resilient when it comes to dealing with the impacts of the hormones. So their system can take higher levels of the hormones, but there are still impacts, but they don't seem to be as pronounced in females versus males, right? And we're going to talk about that on probably on Monday. Because the same female birth control pill, the way it basically works is by tricking your body into thinking that you are pregnant already, right? And that actually has an impact. Apparently, this is a recent study. It impacts the way females look at males in general. And females who are on the birth control pill apparently tend to prefer males that are more submissive, which is an interesting idea, right? But we'll talk about that on Monday. Anyway, so let's introduce this part here now. So, female reproduction. As it says, in male one, male's reproductive system is essentially non-functional until you hit puberty, right? Whereas females, your reproductive cycle actually starts in the first trimester of life. So before you're even born, your body starts a reproductive system, right? And of course, the secondary sexual characteristics that females develop are much different from the ones that males develop, right? Females tend not to develop big, thick muscles, right? I mean, obviously, like pubic hair and these things that they do also develop. But even the pattern of pubic hair growth is different in males versus females, simply because of those X chromosomes and that estrogen, right? Even the way the hair grows is different. Of course, breast enlargement in females is normal. I mean, there are some males who hit puberty and they also have to go through breast enlargement. Oh, we can talk about that on Monday as well. As gynecomastia, it's not a common thing, but it happens often enough, right? And the female reproductive organs, of course, become fully functional during puberty, just like the males. But remember, they still have to be partially active before puberty. They have to produce their gametes before puberty, right? So males are making sperm fresh every day for their entire life once they hit puberty, right? If I say to you that the oldest recorded father was a 98-year-old, I think it's Sudanese guy, 98 years old, popping out and getting women pregnant, right? Now the mother was 16, so 98 and 16, but other people's cultures, right? So even at that age, a man can still get a woman pregnant. Whereas women go through menopause and men do not. You might go through menopause slow, but they ain't pausing, right? Yes, she is a victim, but it's not my culture, it's not my business. Now, because the females are producing their eggs before they're born, right? It means that if a woman is 20 years old, her eggs are 20 years old. She's 25 years old, the eggs are that same age. If she's 40 years old, that is the age of the eggs. What's the big deal about that? DNA is fragile. The older a woman gets, the more fragile the DNA in her eggs becomes. Right? This is the reason why older women have an increased risk of having babies with all sorts of congenital problems, even genetic problems like Down syndrome, because the DNA in the eggs is so unreliable. Generally speaking, once a woman's 35, the risk of having birth defects increases dramatically, right? And it is also the reason why women go through menopause. Well, one of the reasons anyway, because if a woman continued to have the ability to get pregnant in those ages, she'd be producing lots of non-functional children that would be a burden to her and would reduce her ability to support her other children. So evolution would work against her and she would die. So it makes far more sense that women, at a certain point, there's a cutoff, no more children. Go and help your daughter raise her grandparent. Right? There's a reason for it. Right? Now, that said, I'm not saying, hey, run go out and get pregnant today. Right? Just be aware that once a woman passes 35, things start to become more concerning. Well, drastically more concerning. Right? All right. We'll pick this up on Monday when we can go through all of this. Well, I'm at slide 50. So we'll see how far into this we can get. We might not be able to do childbirth. You probably have to read that part yourself. All right, folks. So Monday it is. Remember, somebody shoot me an email or something to let me know what time on Monday. 5, 6, 7, whatever it is, I'm okay with it, right? Otherwise, folks, Monday it is.